For the people who may not be familiar with Pastor Tim Timberlake, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I am in Jacksonville, Florida. I'm born and raised in Durham, North Carolina, Bull City, and have been pastoring for 17 years. And I never wanted to pastor, never had a desire to be in ministry, and really got burned out with church pretty early on. My parents were pastors, and when I was 12 years old, my father was diagnosed with stage 4 terminal throat cancer. And when he was diagnosed, my perspective and perception of God was, if this is the way God treats his servant, I don't want to serve that type of God. Just being ignorant and not really knowing God's intentions and God's will at 12 years old. And at that age, you're really kind of standing off of the faith of the people that are around you. So whatever they believe, you tend to pick up those things and really kind of put them into the routine, but not necessarily personal practice. And so it was a part of my routine, but it was not a part of my core belief. And at 12, just really walked away from my relationship with God until my father struggled and fight for his life, and really have a pretty hard battle for the next 5 years. And on my 18th birthday, he sat me down and he began to share with me some things that he saw God unpacking and unfolding for my life. And he talked to me for 5 hours, man, on my birthday, and just kind of speaking into me in a loving way, and telling me that there was more in store for me than what I could currently see. And after about 5 hours, he goes upstairs to his room, and 2 a.m. that following morning, my mom knocks on the door, and she tells me to help her get my father out of bed because he's not responding. And so I pull him out of the bed, and he's already transitioned from this life to the next. He's already dead. And so I just remember thinking to myself, man, I thought that I had more time. I thought that we had more time to have these type of conversations. And you grow up really, really quick when something like that happens. And I ended up going to school. I had a couple of basketball scholarship offers, and ended up going to the closest school that I got accepted into, which was Hampton University. So I could drive back and forth to check on my mom. And one night while I was in my apartment, I went to sleep and just heard the voice of God so clear speak to me, something that was undeniable, something that I couldn't shake. And it really scared me. It jarred me. And I woke up and I called my mom. It was like 3 a.m. in the morning. And I called her and began to describe to her what I heard. And she started laughing almost hysterically. And I was super confused. And I was like, what the heck are you laughing at? And she said, this is the same exact thing that your father heard when he was called into ministry. And it jarred me so much that I ended up transferring from Hampton University that week to Bible College in Detroit, Michigan, and finishing up there. And after I graduated from there, stepping into full-time ministry and never looked back, man.
Wow, that is a lot. And 17 years later, here you are. You're an author, you're a pastor of one of the largest churches in the world. Like, how does that feel knowing where you came from to where you are now?
Yeah, extremely humbling. I one of the things that I read before I speak or preach or talk anywhere, at the top of my notes is a quote, and it says, "I am the hope and dream of a slave." And so
Mm.
my grandfather was a sharecropper. My great great grandfather was a slave, and I am fulfilling their wildest dreams. And so understanding that, knowing that, it's extremely humbling, man, to stand on their shoulders and really see things that they dreamed of, see things that they hoped for, and be able to walk into some of the things that they prayed for. And so I keep that as a reminder every single day, that I am fulfilling the dreams and the hopes of my forefathers that went before me.
Wow. Now, speaking of fathers, you mentioned that you felt like you didn't have enough time with your father to
Mhm,
have more of the real conversations that you guys have. And this is when he was transitioning and when you were 18, right?
mhm. For sure, yeah.
So so almost, 20 years or so later, looking back on those conversations, like, do you still feel that way, or are you appreciative of the time that you did have?
That's a great question. I think it's both and. I think we always um, live with some sense of we could have did that better. And I believe that helps to shape our future, to grow us and mature us into the people or persons that we are becoming. And so if we don't understand our past, we won't discover our future. And one of the things that I try to implement as a daily practice is reflection on what I did yesterday. And there's very few days in my life where I don't think about that conversation and how I could have stewarded that conversation and that time better. But I am grateful for it because it has made me into the person, into the man that I am today. And so out of that great pain came purpose. And I believe that pain has a sneaky and suspicious way of propelling us into our destiny if we allow it to. And so pain is one of those things where if we lean into it for a season, it can strengthen us and grow us and mature us. And if we run away from it, we'll never know what we could have been if we would have stayed under the weight of the responsibility of pain. And so I believe it's both and. We should reflect on the past, but we should also pioneer and steward the future well, because our legacy depends on it. Your mic went out, Q.
Tell us about that process and tell us about the different cities that have been a part of that journey.
Can you repeat it again? A part of it got cut off.
Oh, my apologies. I was saying that you started off as a young boy, of course, in your family's church, learning
Hmm.
the word from the pews. Now you're pastoring thousands of people across the country in your very own church in Florida. So tell us about that process of you becoming pastor and about the different cities that were a part of that journey.
Yeah, I think that God graces men and women to step into positions, from a biblical perspective, not to get too deep, but he normally anoints for offices within the body of Christ for the world. And, for me, that calling is to pastor, which is a shepherd that tends to God's sheep, his children. And so, still learning, still developing, still growing. My prayer is that along the way of this journey, I can pick up things from various places that have had impact on me and implement them into my leadership. And so, I am who I am because of what I grew up around in North Carolina. And then from North Carolina, Virginia, then from Virginia, Detroit, Michigan, and from Detroit, Michigan, back to North Carolina, and then North Carolina, back to Florida. And so each and every place plays a significant role in our life. And our life are like magnets. And as we are going along this journey, we attract different things. And if we're not careful, we will pick up things that God never intended for us to pick up on if we don't do personal inventory in and through our lives periodically. And so I try to make it a practice to do inventory and see what's there that doesn't need to be there, to see what's there that should be there, and to develop those things so that I can continue to become who God has created me to be. And so, me being a pastor is secondary to me being a good son and a good husband and a good father. And one of the things that I really utilize as a core value is God and my family get the best of my time, and everyone else gets the rest of my time. And so, if I steward that well, then I don't have to worry about developing into a good leader, because I am developing being a good son to God. I am developing being a good husband to my wife. I am developing being a good father to my son. And everyone gets a good leader because of the development in those other three areas. And so it doesn't make sense for me to develop my leadership or my pastoring and not develop these relationships that are meaningful and valuable to me. And I know and understand at the end of my life, the people that I lead won't be beside me on my hospital bed, but my family will be. And so I want to invest my best into them. And because I invest my best into them, I become the leader that everyone sees. And so that's kind of my process, my rhyme, my reason, the theory behind what I have attracted and what I have picked up along the way from the various cities and the various people that are super important to
So you've used the time that you were given
me.
to become who I guess you were destined to be.
Hmm.
I'm assuming you've used the power of 1440.
Yeah, for sure.
So for people out there who are not familiar with 1440, we all know 24/7,
Hmm.
but what is 1440 and what is the significance and why did you write the book, The
Yeah,
Power of 1440?
it's a great segue. I like what you did there.
Thank you. Thank
But
you.
I think when we typically think of a day, we think in terms of 24 hours. And it seems like a long period of time. But when you really think about a day and you hone in to its truest essence, it's 1,440 minutes that we have every single day. When you think about that throughout your day, how many of those minutes go wasted? How many of those minutes go to something that's aimless, something that's mindless, something that's useless? Statistically speaking, scientists and people that track history believe we waste about 40% of our day. Now, take that in conjunction with, for our lifespan, we normally sleep anywhere between 25 and 30 years of our whole life. We sleep that. And so if we take that percentage and add it to how much time we spend sleeping, we really only lean into about 4 or 5 hours intentionally a day. And so
Wow.
understanding that, studying that, researching that, and really leaning into that idea, I wanted to really challenge myself to be intentional with the minutes that I steward every single day, because I know minutes turn into moments and moments turn into my reality.
Mm.
And so if I desire for my reality to change, I have to observe change and look at my minutes. And I think that if 2020 taught us anything, it's that we can't predict anything. We cannot control anything. And so if we cannot control time, how can we manage it? We don't tell time to stop. We don't tell time to go. We don't tell time to speed up. We don't tell time to slow down. And there's this misconception that we can manage our time. You can't manage what you cannot control. But what can we do? We can steward it. And so we don't own it. We steward it. And this book, The Power of 1440, is a book of discovery of how we can steward our time better so that we could live the lives that I believe God intends for us to live.
Mm. So what inspired you to actually become an author? Because this is not your first book, correct?
Correct. Yeah, it's kind of weird for me. Like I'll get this thought that I can't shake, and I know it's weighty enough for me to get material out of. And so, with my first book entitled "Abandon," it was these things that I knew that I was carrying into a season that I should leave behind, that I should abandon, that I should walk away from. And so from there, I started to think about different storyline, and from storyline application, from application for me, the next thing is scripture, and from scripture, how does it relate to the reader? And with the Power 1440, it was kind of the same methodology to writing this book. It was me putting down on paper some ideas that changed my life that I believe would change the lives of those that read them. And so, it really was spearheaded out of that moment with my father, my 18th birthday, and really regretting not spending and stewarding that time well with him, and utilizing that place of pain to be the catalyst to help other people discover their purpose. And so, that for me is kind of what um, has really spiraled these book concepts. And, I don't enjoy reading a lot of books, ironically. And I don't really enjoy a lot of writing. But when I get a hold of something that I can't shake, I know that I'm supposed to write it and supposed to give it to the world so that they could benefit from it and allow them to excel and push beyond what I could do because of the pain that I've endured and encountered.
Mm. So what I want to know, and this is something that I like to when I'm speaking with different pastors, reverends, preachers, whatever they're called. I definitely want to know the difference between all of those when we get a chance. But the church has been a part of the Black community for, at this point, centuries.
Mhm.
And faith is something that we were taught to hold on to. It would get us through many tough times. But the church is something that was good for the community, but it was something that, as the generations progressed, people kind of shied away from because of some of the
Mhm.
old teachings. Now, you, as somebody that is leading one of the largest congregations in the world, how did you modernize, aside from, of course, being available online? How did you modernize the church and allow people to feel comfortable coming back into the whole church family setting?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that the message of Jesus does not change, but the methods that he uses does. And so if we are stuck in an old method, then it gets stagnant, it gets stale. And so, we don't utilize the same televisions that we used in the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s. It doesn't mean that the concept of television has changed. It means that the method in which we utilize it has. And so, as far as entertainment, it's the same principle. It's not that entertainment is gone away; it's how we consume it that has changed. And so, as it concerns pastoring in this era and in this day, and really drawing a bunch of people into this message of Jesus Christ, I think approach is important. And I think that, one of the core things that I implement not only in church, but first in my house, me and my wife, we have the statement that we utilize because we pastor and walk with a lot of people from all various walks of life. And one of our core statements is you don't have to believe to belong. And, I believe that what I carry, what I have, who is on the inside of me, is powerful enough to impact someone who does not yet know that they need him. And so I don't have to push what I am. I don't have to push who I am. All I have to do is be who I am. And if I am being who God has equipped and made me to be, I think it's contagious. I think it's impactful. And I think it rubs off on the people that are around me. And so we read a lot about Jesus in the Bible. We read a lot about what Jesus did. We never see that he promoted who he was to other people. They knew. And the people around him were able to identify who he was and tell people who Jesus Christ was. Point in case, when he was turned over to the soldiers, they were confused about who Jesus was because he was not a self promoter. He didn't tell people, this is who I am. They were confused so much so that Judas had to kiss him to identify him. And so, one of the things that that tells me and shows me is if I am just who he created me to be, then he'll draw the people to his name and not me. And I think that is what has been successful for us in helping to push this gospel of Jesus Christ forward and to help pioneer and steward his church in an era of uncertainty and unknown. And it's been what I call a glorious grind. It's been a great challenge to navigate. It's been a fun discovery journey to see how God continues to expand the minds and lives of his people in this season of quarantine, COVID,
Mhm.
crisis, the different pandemics that we see now. We don't just see a pandemic in COVID-19. We see an economic pandemic. We see a racial pandemic. We see a mental crisis pandemic. And so, in all of these different dynamics, I believe it's a great opportunity for us to be who God has equipped and called us to be. And so,
Yes.
you help people solve problems. They get very inquisitive about why. And so at the end
Mm.
of our life, we're known for one of two things, and that's the problems that we solve or the problems that we create. You help people
Mm.
solve problems, they'll get inquisitive about why you're helping them. And we learn by the questions that we ask. And so that's a little bit about the method behind what has made us who we are and why we continue to grow even in the pandemic.
Yes. So there's one word that you mentioned a few sentences ago, and that was being.
Mhm.
So let's talk about you being a family man, being a father.
Mhm.
What sort of, I guess, things that your parents instilled in you that you instill in your children? And with everything that we've been dealing with, how have the conversations with your children been? Has it been hard, easy?
Yeah, I think it's always challenging having tough conversations with your kids. And so, for me, I've had the privilege of fathering my little brother, who my parents adopted at 3 months. And the year after they adopted him, my father went home to be with the Lord. And
Mm,
so I was the only father that he's known. He's 21 now. And so I've had the opportunity to walk with him, father him, and steward that opportunity well. And I have a 4-year-old as well, and so both of them, their names are Micah and Maxwell.
mhm,
And so from 4 to 21, you have a range of different conversations. My 4-year-old is super inquisitive, and my 21-year-old is super knowledgeable because of the information and how quickly we receive it now. But it's always interesting navigating how much information to share, how much information to withhold, and what direction to point them in the various seasons of life. And it's one of the joys of parenting. It is challenging and it is difficult, but I believe that when we run in the lane that God has called us to run in parenting, then God gives us the wisdom and the know-how to navigate it and steward it well. Doesn't mean that we always get it right, but it means that we are
mhm,
trying. And so, particularly in the last season, questions like, where did it come from? How long do we have to stay inside? Why can't I go see my friends? All these different things, and really having to break down to them the importance of why we are in the season that we're in, what we will learn from the season that we're in, and what we will do when we come out of it,
mhm,
are great teaching moments. And so we don't lose when we learn. And so we win some and then we learn some, but we never lose if we learn. And every season of life is an opportunity to learn something. And so that's the thing that I try to explain to them. And, my prayer is that something that I do would stick to them, just as the things my father did for me in front of me
mhm.
have stuck with me. And so the greatest thing that I can ever encourage fathers that are listening right now to do is show your kids how to do it, tell them how to do it, watch them do it, and then lead them to it.
Mm.
That was the thing that my father did for me. He showed me how to do it. He told me how to do it. He watched me do it, and then he left me alone to do it. And that's good parenting.
I would have to agree. I'm not a parent, but just listening to that and also realizing how my parents actually did that very same thing,
Yeah.
I definitely understand how that can be a part of great parenting. Let's talk about discovering your passion, discovering your
Mhm.
purpose. Actually, that's something that a lot of us nowadays, I would say, we deal with, because
Mhm.
everybody is interested in so many different things that we can't narrow down what we're actually passionate about and what we're, I guess, destined to become. So, can you speak to us about discovering that and, walking into that season of purpose?
Yeah. And so we don't decide our purpose and our future, but we discover it.
Mm,
And so it's just like we don't, when we're on a journey, when we're driving, we don't decide what the city looks like, but we discover what it looks like. And our destiny and our purpose is the same way. And as we continually take steps forward in the direction of what that purpose is, we have to ask ourselves, really three questions. The first one is, what are my ambitions? And why are they my ambitions? The second one is, what are my anxieties and why they are my anxieties? And the third one is, what are my activities? And so when you really ask yourself those three questions, my ambitions, my anxieties, my activities, you can discover a portion of your purpose. So the
mm,
reason these are important, your ambitions determine your heart's motive, right? Your anxieties tell you what you fear. So when you think about anxiety, anxiety is experiencing failure in advance.
mhm,
It is you telling yourself, I'm going to fail at whatever it is that I am en route to. And the third thing is your activities. Whatever you find yourself continuing to do over and over again is either something that you enjoy, either something that has become a habit, or something that is a part of your purpose. And so when you ask yourself those three things, they leave breadcrumbs towards your purpose.
mm.
And so you are en route to the purpose that God has placed inside of you when you begin to discover, when you begin to ask yourself, what are my ambitions? What are my anxieties? What are my activities? And I guarantee you can pinpoint your purpose to those three things.
Huh. Now, a lot of people need to hear this, and I actually am one of those people because there's so many things that I enjoy in life. There's so many things that I actually have done, but figuring out what the next 20, 30, 40
Yeah,
years are going to look like, it's definitely something that causes anxiety, but I'm ready to discover
that's
what
it.
it's going to look like. So,
That's it, man.
yes,
That
thank
is
you
so.
for that. So, when people think of you legacy wise, what
Mhm.
is something that you want them to know? What kind of legacy are you planning to, leave for the people?
Yeah, at the end of my life, my prayer is that my legacy would be he loved God well, he loved his family well, he loved God's people well. And my life is a life of service. My life is a life of giving. And at the end of it, if that's how people remember me, then that is a life well lived. And I live my life for two words, and those two words are well done. And
Mm,
if I get that well done at the end of my life on that last breath, then I have succeeded and have been successful in this life of service.
wow, that is amazing. Like, as the conversation before, this conversation definitely dropped a lot of jewels.
Mm.
And you are throwing those quotes out there. I'm a person that loves quotes, and you definitely threw the quotes out there. So tell us how people can, of course, buy the books,
Mhm.
Abandoned and The Power of 1440, and how people can stay in contact with you and the ministry.
Yeah, so you can go to thepowerof1440.com to pick up the Power of 1440, or you can buy both books where really any books are sold. So Barnes and Nobles, Amazon, Books a Million, anywhere books are sold, you can find both the Power of 1440 and Abandon. If you desire to connect with me, I'm very personal and I
Mhm.
love to connect with people. And so I give my text number. It's 919-568-5873. And you can shoot me a text and I'll respond to you and assist and serve in any way that I can. If you desire to connect to me on social media, on Instagram, it's T Timberlake. On Twitter, it's Tim Timberlake. And on Facebook, it is facebook.com/Tim Timberlake page. And I look forward to connecting you on any one or all of those platforms at your leisure.
Yes. What's next for you? What can we look forward to from the Tim Timberlake brand or the church or any of that?
Yeah, so my desire, as I mentioned before, is just to serve people. And so any opportunity I get to serve more people, it's a great day in my life. And so what's next for us is we want to serve more people and look for opportunities and ways to do so. And so currently right now in Zimbabwe, we feed 80,000 children a day, and looking forward to expanding that to help reach, help serve more people. And
Yes.
so my prayer is by the beginning of 2022, we're serving 100,000 kids every single day and
Mm,
educating them and giving them a both sound education in the world and a biblical education in the things of God, and providing a meal for them 3 times a day for 100,000 children. I understand and know if you help to impact uh, the generation that's coming behind you, the world will be a better place. And so that's what I desire to
yes.
do. And that's what I desire to be a part of my legacy.
You know what? And on that note, well done.
God, thank you. Thank you.
So again, I absolutely appreciate you. I'm looking forward to reading The Power of 1440 myself. So I have to
Thank
go ahead and log on and grab that book. And I appreciate everything that you've not only done for the people who will be inspired by this interview, but the people that you are inspiring across the world, honestly. So I thank you on behalf of them.
Thank you, Q. It's always a joy, man. And like I told you before, anything I can do to serve, man, you and what God has given you, it would be a joy and an honor, man. So don't hesitate to call me or text me, bro.
I appreciate that. I still have the number. So I
Okay.
thank you so much. And you have an amazing, blessed day.
Thank you. You do the same, man.